They called her the analyst like it was a weakness, like it meant she belonged behind screens, not sandbags, like numbers couldn't bleed, and when the first enemy mortar landed 50 meters from the compound, nobody looked at her for help. They would, they just didn't know it yet. Like, subscribe, and click the bell icon for more stories. The desert was quiet in that unsettling way soldiers learn to fear. Not peaceful, not calm, just waiting. The forward operating base sat low against the Afghan horizon, concrete walls stained by years of dust, heat, and old explosions. Surveillance towers cut thin silhouettes against a pale sky, and the wind carried the smell of diesel, sweat, and dry earth. Inside a dim operations room, lit by monitors and flickering fluorescent bulbs, Captain Eliza Munro stood with her arms crossed, eyes fixed on a wall of data. She wasn't wearing body armor, not yet. She wore a headset, a faded JSOC patch on her shoulder, and the kind of focus that shut out everything else. Eliza was intelligence support, attached to a Joint Special Operations Task Force. She mapped insurgent patterns, tracked supply routes, predicted attacks before they happened, or at least that was the idea. To the operators moving in and out of the compound, rifles slung, faces hard. She was the analyst. Useful, necessary, but distant, untested. The camera would drift past the operators cleaning weapons, past the boots caked in dust, and finally settle on her face, calm, controlled, but behind her eyes, something was tightening. She had flagged the anomaly 6 hours earlier. A disruption in local communications, a pattern that didn't fit. It suggested coordination, movement, preparation. She had pushed the report up the chain, quietly, professionally. The response came back just as quiet. Not enough to move assets, monitor and wait. Waiting was something Eliza had learned to hate. She'd grown up waiting. Waiting for her mother to come home from double shifts. Waiting for news after her brother deployed with the Marines. Waiting for a folded flag that never came, but the silence did. That silence followed her into adulthood, into intelligence work, into every late-night briefing where she learned how quickly lives could hinge on ignored details. Outside, the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the compound. Radios crackled. A patrol returned, dust trailing behind their vehicle. Laughter drifted briefly through the air, sharp and tired. Normal to normal. Eliza zoomed in on a satellite feed. Fingers moving faster now. Heat signatures. Too many, too deliberate. Her jaw tightened. She opened her mouth to speak, then hesitated. She'd already spoken once. She knew how it sounded to them. Another analyst with another theory. The first explosion answered her doubt. The ground shook. Lights flickered. Dust rained from the ceiling. The sound wasn't loud so much as it was heavy, a concussive thud that punched the air out of the room. Alarms screamed to life, red lights washing over faces that had been relaxed seconds before. Eliza, someone shouted, but she was already moving. The camera would follow her as she grabbed a helmet, a vest, her hands steady despite the chaos. Outside, the compound erupted into motion, shouts, gunfire cracking in the distance. The sharp metallic clang of the alarm bell, smoke rising near the outer wall. Enemy forces weren't probing, they were committing. Eliza ran toward the operations center exit, heart pounding, not with fear, but with something colder. Confirmation. She had been right. And now being right wasn't enough. As she stepped into the open, another mortar landed closer this time. The blast knocked her to the ground, breath leaving her lungs in a sharp gasp. She lay there for half a second, staring at the sky, dust and debris falling like dirty snow. Somewhere beyond the walls, unseen and patient, enemy forces were closing in, and somewhere out there, unknown to her, a JSOC sniper was already watching. The night was about to change everything. The second explosion came before the echo of the first had fully died. That's when the fear finally reached the compound. Not panic, fear with purpose. Eliza pushed herself up, coughing, her helmet now secured, her vest heavy against her chest. The camera would track low behind her boots as she ran across the gravel, each step crunching too loud against the chaos. Tracer fire streaked across the sky beyond the outer wall, thin red lines cutting through dusk. The enemy had range and numbers. Inside the command bunker, voices overlapped in sharp bursts. Radios screamed conflicting reports. A perimeter breach attempt on the east side, suppressing fire from the ridgeline, unknown enemy strength. The room smelled like ozone, sweat, and burned circuitry. Eliza moved straight to the central display, ignoring the looks. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up feeds, overlays, timelines. She wasn't thinking about rank or perception now. She was thinking in patterns. "They're not random," she said, voice calm but firm. A few heads turned. The mortar are walking us inward. They're shaping the compound. A major glanced at her, jaw tight. "You sure?" She nodded once. No hesitation. "They're pushing us toward the south corridor. That's where they want the breach." Another explosion shook the room, closer still. The lights flickered again. The camera would cut to Eliza's face as she leaned closer to the screen, eyes scanning heat signatures along a dark ridge. She isolated one cluster, then another. Her breath slowed. This was the language she spoke fluently: movement, intent, timing. "They're using the ridge as overwatch," she said. "At least one sniper team, possibly two, and they're coordinating with ground elements moving through the dry canal." The room went quiet for a beat. Not because they doubted her, but because they were starting to understand. Outside, the firefight intensified. The sound of machine gun fire rolled like thunder, punctuated by sharp cracks of return shots. Medics dragged a wounded operator behind cover. Blood darkened the dust beneath him. Eliza saw it all through the feeds. She also saw what wasn't there. "There," she said suddenly, zooming in that gap. "They're avoiding it on purpose." The major leaned in. "Why?" "Because they know something's watching it," she replied. "Which means they think they've already neutralized it." That's when a new voice cut through the radio chatter, low, controlled, almost calm to the point of being unsettling. Overwatch 2 command, negative neutralization. I'm still here. The room froze. Eliza turned toward the radio, heart skipping not from fear, but recognition. She knew that voice type, the ones that didn't waste words, the ones trained to see everything. Identify, the major said. JSOC sniper element, the voice replied. Call sign Raven 1. I've been tracking enemy movement for 20 minutes. Analyst is correct. They're shaping. The camera would slowly push in on Eliza's face. For the first time, someone out there had confirmed what she saw. Not from a screen, from a scope. Raven 1 continued. I can hold the ridge. But I need target priority. Eliza didn't wait for permission. She stepped forward, hand on the console. I can give you their command node, she said into the mic. They're rotating leadership every 6 minutes to avoid pattern detection, but they always return to the same thermal shadow. A pause, short, measuring. Send it, Raven 1 said. Her fingers moved, transmitting coordinates, overlays, predictions. The feeds synced somewhere miles away. A sniper adjusted his position based on her data. The first enemy commander went down 30 seconds later. The effect was immediate. Confusion rippled through the enemy movement. Fire slackened. Units hesitated. But victory didn't follow. Not yet. Multiple heat signatures breaking off, Raven 1 reported. They're adapting. Eliza swallowed. She'd anticipated this, but seeing it unfold felt different. They're coming inside the wire, she said quietly, and they know exactly where we're weakest. The major looked at her now, really looked. Can you stop them? Eliza met his gaze. I can try, but it'll cost us time, and time is blood. Outside, the southern corridor alarm wailed. The enemy had made their move, and Eliza Monroe was no longer just the analyst. The night fully claimed the desert as the first breach attempt hit the south corridor. This wasn't a test anymore. This was survival. The camera would cut between two worlds. Eliza inside the bunker, bathed in the cold glow of screens, and Raven 1 stretched prone on a rocky outcrop miles away. The world narrowed to a single breath and a crack. Two strangers connected by data, trust, and the understanding that mistakes cost lives. Eliza's voice stayed steady as she called out movements. Her pulse hammered in her ears, but her hands didn't shake. She tracked enemy paths, updating Raven 1 in real time. He responded with confirmations and single-word acknowledgements. No wasted motion, no emotion in the voice. Just precision. Outside the bunker, operators moved under fire, hugging walls, returning controlled bursts. The air smelled of cordite and burning insulation. A medic shouted for plasma. Someone screamed once, then went quiet. Eliza flinched just once. She pushed it down there, funneling toward the maintenance trench. She said into the mic, if they reach it, they'll bypass the kill zone. Copy, Raven 1 replied. I see them. The camera would slow as Raven 1 exhaled. A shot cracked through the night. Then another. 2 heat signatures dropped. The rest scattered. But the enemy learned fast. Raven 1, Eliza said, leaning closer to the screen. They're baiting you. Watch your... The transmission cut out in a burst of static. Her heart stopped. Raven 1, come back, she said, fighting to keep her voice level. No response. On the feed, a new heat bloom appeared near his last known position. Explosion. Secondary debris. The room fell silent, except for the alarms. Eliza stared at the screen, her reflection faintly visible in the glass. For a moment, the analyst, the officer, the professional disappeared, replaced by a sister who remembered a knock on the door years ago. No, she whispered. The major put a hand on her shoulder, but she shook it off, already typing, rerouting feeds, forcing clarity through chaos. He's not gone, she said, more to herself than anyone else. But they wouldn't fire that unless they thought they'd missed. She pulled up terrain models, wind data, ballistic estimates. Her mind raced ahead, assembling probabilities. There, she said suddenly. He rolled. He had to. That explosion was too shallow. A pause. Then the radio crackled again, weak, but alive. Overwatch still breathing, Raven 1 said, lost primary optic. Minor injuries. Eliza let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. The room exhaled with her. They know you're there now, she said. They'll push harder. I know, he replied. I can still fight. She hesitated, then made a decision that would define the night. If you stay, she said, they'll eventually overwhelm you. But if you reposition 300 meters west, you can collapse their assault lane. Silence stretched. This wasn't a suggestion. It was a gamble. That puts me exposed, Raven 1 said. It puts you decisive, Eliza answered. The camera would linger on her face, resolve etched deep. She wasn't ordering him. She was trusting him with her judgment. Do it, she added quietly. I'll guide you. Outside, the breach alarm shifted tone. The enemy was closer now. Too close. Raven 1 moved. Each step he took, Eliza tracked. Each risk, she weighed. She felt every second like a weight pressing down on her chest. Then, almost in unison, the feeds changed. Enemy movement stalled. Fire became sporadic, confused. Target rich, Raven 1 said. The ridge erupted in controlled chaos, precise shots, surgical, dismantling leadership and momentum. The assault faltered, then broke. Inside the compound, operators pushed forward, reclaiming ground inch by inch. But as the enemy began to retreat, Eliza noticed something else. A secondary force. Hidden, moving fast. They're not done, she said, eyes widening. They're going for the command bunker, and this time Raven 1 couldn't reach them in time. The first explosion hit the bunker entrance like a sledgehammer. Concrete dust filled the air. And suddenly, the war was inside. The camera would shake as the blast doors buckled, alarms screaming at a pitch that made teeth ache. Lights went out, plunging the command center into emergency red. Shouts echoed in the darkness. Someone went down hard, the sound of bone against metal, unmistakable. Eliza was thrown against a console, pain flaring across her shoulder. She gritted her teeth, forced herself upright, vision swimming. The screens still glowed, cracked but functional. Outside the door, muffled gunfire and the sharp rattle of enemy weapons grew closer. This wasn't theoretical anymore. This wasn't data. This was personal. Eliza moved to the rear. The major shouted, raising his rifle toward the door. She didn't. She couldn't. Because on her screen she saw the final piece. "They're not here to take the bunker," she said. Voice hoarse. "They're here to kill the feeds. To blind us." Another explosion rocked the hallway. Raven One's voice cut in, strained now. "Command, I can't cover your interior. What's your status?" Eliza pressed the mic closer. "They're breaching. If they destroy the comms, you lose us." A pause. Then something rare. Emotion. "Then you have to hold," Raven One said. The camera would close in on Eliza's face as she made her choice. She grabbed a fallen rifle from the floor. She wasn't trained like the operators. She knew that, but she knew the layout. She knew the timing. She moved. The hallway was smoke and shadows. Emergency lights flickered, painting everything in red. An enemy silhouette appeared at the far end, close, too close. Eliza fired. The recoil nearly knocked her back, but the shot landed. The figure dropped. Her hands shook now, just a little. She ducked behind a support beam as rounds tore into the wall above her. Concrete chips rained down. Her breathing came fast, shallow. This wasn't her world, but it was her fight. She keyed the mic again. "Raven One, I need 30 seconds. 30 seconds for what?" he asked. "For you to end this," she replied. He didn't ask how. He didn't need to. Outside, Raven One took a risk no manual would recommend. He abandoned concealment, repositioned for a final angle. Enemy fire snapped around him, close enough to hear. Inside, Eliza crawled toward the comms junction, dragging the rifle, shoulders screaming in protest. An enemy soldier rounded the corner, eyes widening in surprise. The camera would slow. She fired again. Silence fell heavy and sudden. Then, almost simultaneously, Raven One's final shots echoed across the desert. 1, 2, 3. Each one decisive. Each one ending a command, a plan, a threat. The remaining enemy forces broke and ran. The alarms died down. Smoke drifted. The bunker stood, scarred, damaged, but alive. Eliza slumped against the wall, rifle slipping from her hands. Her body trembled now that it was over. She stared at the ceiling, red lights spinning slowly. "Command to Overwatch," she said softly. "We're still here." Raven One's reply came after a long breath. "Copy that." "So am I." For the first time that night, Eliza allowed herself to close her eyes. But the cost was not yet counted. Morning came quietly, like it was afraid to disturb what had happened. But it also revealed who was still standing. The camera would move slowly through the compound as operators cleaned weapons, medics treated the wounded, and flags snapped softly in the breeze. The fight was over, but its weight lingered in every movement, every look. Eliza sat on a crate near the bunker entrance, arm in a sling, face smudged with grime. She watched the sun rise over the horizon, exhaustion etched deep into her features. She didn't look like a hero. She looked like someone who had been tested and barely held. Footsteps approached. She looked up to see the major standing in front of her. He hesitated, then extended his hand. "You saved this base," he said simply. Eliza shook her head. "We all did." He gave a small, knowing nod. "Raven One wants to meet you." Later, on the edge of the compound, she stood as a helicopter settled nearby, rotors kicking up dust. A lone figure stepped out, tall, deliberate. Rifle slung, face partially shadowed beneath a helmet. The camera would keep distance at first, letting the moment breathe. Raven One stopped a few feet away and removed his helmet. His eyes met hers, sharp, assessing, but respectful. "They called you the analyst," he said. "They still do," Eliza replied. A pause, then a faint smile. "They shouldn't." She felt something tighten in her chest. Not pride. Something deeper, validation earned, not given. "They're writing the after-action report," he continued. "Your name's all over it." Eliza looked back toward the bunker, the screens, the place where she'd always been safest. "Names fade," she said. "Decisions don't." Raven One nodded once. "You made the right ones." The helicopter lifted off, carrying him back into a world of shadows and silence. Eliza watched until it disappeared, the sound fading into the open sky. Later that day, as the compound settled back into routine, someone taped a handwritten sign near the operations room door. It didn't say analyst, it said Captain Monroe. Eliza paused when she saw it. She didn't touch it. She just nodded and stepped inside, the screens lighting her face once more. The camera